Is one game too early for a Stockwatch, Bill?
No. We do them without games. So great, we have information now.
You're absolutely right, partner. Let's get into it. It is the podcast daily. It is Wednesday, and Ohio State has played exactly one time, but they played a lot of players.
Mm-hmm.
They got a fair amount of snaps. Maybe it'd be great to get a second game to evaluate some of that, but they're out there, they're playing. Some guys flash, some guys are making the most of opportunities, and I wonder who's the first guy that comes to mind for you?
There are a lot of players. Also, I'm glad we're doing a Stockwatch without Berm. It's just missed opportunities for him.
Well, this means that we get to steal all of the money.
I know. I'm happy about that.
He walked away.
It's his fault.
Because today is Wednesday morning, and I don't know where he is. He's probably back in Michigan right
now. Where do I want to start? I don't. There's like no Jeremiah Smith stock left, right? There's none. I couldn't possibly find a crumb anywhere, right? So,
well, let's talk about it.
Just
because I think you and I haven't.
Yeah.
I miss you in the press box. I want to get this. I feel very lonely, and I feel less educated because Bill is not with me in the press box, and I'm on an island.
Sorry.
And I don't get to be like, hey, that was pretty cool how Jeremiah Smith had those freshman mistakes and then immediately corrected them and became the player we all thought he was going to be like 5 seconds later.
But that was the thing. It was like if he did not have the debut that he had, I would in absolutely no way be selling Jeremiah Smith stock because he was going to be, I think, by far the best receiver in college football by the time his career is over, and something very special here. But the fact that he dropped the pass that I didn't have the bird's eye view. It was going to be a touchdown, right? If he caught that ball.
It was the best blocked up screen that this team has had in like 5 years.
Yeah, and he dropped the ball. And then he had the blunder where he just didn't get his hand down fast enough and got him set back from a 3rd and 1 to a 3rd and 6, and they couldn't convert. I think a lot of freshmen would have been like, well, I guess this is just a bad debut for me. We'll go get him next week. And I think there's two things at play. There's like Jeremiah being who he is, but then also Chip Kelly and Ryan Day and Will Howard empowering him to bounce back from it immediately on the next drive and him responding the way you want him to respond. For a game against Akron and the first game of what's going to be a very long, productive career, I thought we learned a whole lot about Jeremiah, and it had almost nothing to do with like the catches that he made or the touchdowns that he scored. It was like just having the resolve to flush that drive and then come back and be the guy that this team wants him to be, that this team needs him to be, which is clearly very much a focal point of the offense.
I feel like it counts more, it validates more that he, like, it may be exaggerating, it may be hyperbole to call that adversity, like a drop and like hyper focus on that stuff. But given all the attention that was on him, the fact that he dropped it, the fact that he had the penalty, like it could have compounded. I think we found out, and Ohio State found out a lot about what his mentality is going to be like. They've had 15 spring practices that were really encouraging. And that by the 15th, they were like, hey, this guy doesn't need to take that many reps in the spring game. He's already that good. So that was, you already knew that this stuff was possible, that it was coming, that Ohio State had faith in what he was going to become. But again, he is a true freshman. He is 18 years old, and he did have to go to the sideline and he said he was mad at himself, but nobody else really said anything to him about what happened on that play. And then that he immediately turned it around on the second drive. Ohio State, if they'd gone in 3 and out again, I don't know how things felt pretty uncomfortable in that stadium as they were, with it taking a little while before the Buckeyes found their footing. But Will Howard extended a play, and Jeremiah Smith appeared to adjust his route a little bit, sort of a scramble situation. 3rd and 10, okay, boom. The fact that it was 3rd and 10, then 3rd and 4, and then the touchdown was 3rd and 6, 3 third down conversions, all to Jeremiah Smith, including a touchdown, tells you that Will Howard never lost faith. Ryan Day never lost faith. Brian Hartline, Chip Kelly, they all knew that this guy could go out there and still do it despite what happened on one play. So it'd have been foolish for us to write him off, which we didn't. We knew what he could become, but I think that rather than just focusing on 6 catches, 90 yards, and 2 touchdowns, it's like the way that it came and the response to it that seems to validate it more to me.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. I just wish I could get some. There's no more Jeremiah.
Yeah, sorry,
left. Yeah,
you got it all.
I think I would buy. I will. I buy some stock. Like, this team's going to return a punt for a touchdown this year. It's going to happen.
You guys have gone too far with your special teams love.
Ryan Day guaranteed it on his radio show coming into the Akron game. Brandon Inniss looked dangerous.
He does.
And when's the last time a guy on punt return looked dangerous for this team? Like, was it Jalen Marshall when he returned a punt in 2014 for a touchdown? Like, it's just.
I still held my breath when Jalen Marshall was doing things back then.
He was a little loose with it sometimes. But I just think there's a different mentality on special teams, and especially on punt return. And Ryan Day on Tuesday was talking about They did some studies in the offseason about when you let a punt hit the turf and how far the ball rolls, and he said it's like an average of 10 yards. And he said the one play where Brandon Inniss picked up the rolling ball and ran it, I forget how long the return was, but he said that saved us 3 or 4 first downs that the offense had to get, which I just thought was like very illuminating on how they are thinking differently about punt return this year. So you combine a different mindset with a guy in Brandon Inniss who's definitely got some wiggle, he's got some speed, he'll run through some tackles, he's pretty strong. You can tell he definitely wants to house one, like based off how he's reacting to stuff last year. And it's like, okay, now when Ohio State is returning punts, you got to pay attention. Because before, I would just like go get a drink or go get a bath, go to the bathroom, go get some popcorn. Because it's like, they're just going to fair catch it. And then I'll watch the offense play. It's like, nope, this is a weapon for them now. And I believe wholeheartedly they're going to score a touchdown on punt return this year.
Well, we talked about it on Tuesday in Snap Judgments. Like, they are actually thinking about special teams. Mm-hmm. Ryan Day is actually thinking about it. I'm not saying that the coaching staff was going to get a Coke during, the kicking phase of the game, but they did not seem as invested in the success. There was never a point when Ryan Day's like, you know what? There's so much athleticism out there, going to guarantee that whoever is going to go return a punt for a touchdown. That never happened. That hasn't happened in 5+ years here. Mm-hmm. So I think the level of investment is clear. And it's a crazy, crazy thing to say because they were invested $500,000 in a special teams coordinator, and it was like, well, whatever, just washing your hands and moving on to the next thing. Like, whether it's Brandon Inniss specifically or Emeka Ibuka or Carnell Tate, Jaden Bauer, like, whatever. There's a different level of confidence which comes by how much preparation you put into it. It is the old coaching cliche of getting what you emphasize. They simply weren't doing that in the past, which is mind-boggling to me, but it appears they're past that part.
They were pretty locked in on special teams. Like, it was nothing spectacular. We're just like, trying. Just like, you hate to put it in I guess those terms necessarily, but I thought it was very noticeable that they had a better operation on special teams, and I think the area where we'll see that show up the most is on punt return. The Akron game is probably not a game where you're going to start dialing up punt blocks, but I could see that happening too, right? I think those are because kickoff's so weird now. I think those are the areas where you can really feel that impact, and I do think they're going to break through. That's going to happen this year. You buying stock in anything?
Yeah, it's weird. You're talking about special teams, and I'm going to buy some stock in Austin Saraveld. I don't know what it'll look like. It does seem to be that Ohio State is viewing this more of like he is the backup left guard. Donovan Jackson was out. Maybe he can work in more on the left side. I wonder if there's going to be a point, and this is not in any way, shape, or form a criticism of Tegra Shabola, who I thought collectively the interior was really solid. I think that they did not play a perfect game. Perimeter blocking was a little bit of a weakness, but I think the trio that played most of the game inside was pretty solid. And Austin Saraveld, I thought, had a very good debut. Seth McLaughlin, I think Ohio State can trust him to be the apex. They're going to be fine. And Tegra Shabola did nothing that I thought was like discouraging from him being the starting right guard moving forward. So I'm not even broaching this subject from the vantage point of like, should Austin Saraveld play instead of Tegra Shabola? I don't think that that's all that likely to happen. But I wonder if Saturday was solid enough, and if he gets to play again, and we'll find out how much the Buckeyes want to put Donovan Jackson out there on Saturday night, which I don't know if it needs to be or should be a ton, especially with an off week looming after that. Like, I would not take any risks with Donovan Jackson's health, given his importance to the team and the offensive line down the road. Like, does Austin Saraveld change that conversation for the way they approach just Western Michigan? Does it, take some reps off of Donovan Jackson's shoulder in 3 or 4 weeks? I think he's doing a good enough job that even if the role doesn't expand a ton this year, it raises the ceiling for 2025, if nothing else.
Yeah, it does. And I think like he's not going to Wally Pip Donovan Jackson.
No, he's not.
Right? But I think there's an interesting competition perhaps happening for who is the next guy in, who is your sixth man. And I think right now the answer to that question is Carson Hinsman. And he had some good moments on Saturday. He had the one, I think, very obvious blunder on the pull play where he wasn't the only one who blocked nobody, but he didn't block anybody, and the play was dropped, I think, at the line of scrimmage. So he had some things to clean up there. But I think if they're able to keep getting Austin Saraveld work and Carson Hinsman is the backup right guard, like there could be a little back and forth there for who like down the road, if you need a sixth, who might that be? And also Austin Saraveld has played tackle in camp too, so that might help him as well. So he's become a very important depth piece for them. because of that versatility, which I wasn't even anticipating coming into this year, but also because like I thought he handled himself okay for a guy in his very first game action, and definitely settled in the second half. So he's been on my radar for a minute because people have not really stopped talking about his progress since he got here, but it was nice to see it on the field.
Yeah, and it just wasn't. You've mentioned him before, and you paid attention to him for a while, and going back to spring. But like, even when we would have conversations going into training camp a month ago, it was like, well, Tegra, Carson, then Luke Montgomery. And like, what is that? He did not really come up that much in conversation, even when it was just about guard. And then he's like, well, he popped out to tackle one day, and he's like, Justin Fry's like, holy cow, this guy took the challenge. And was it perfect? No. Did he hold his own? Did he take a new task and try his best to master it? Yeah, he did. And like the work ethic and all that stuff is there. I've been really impressed with that. I don't know what it means, but I didn't think a month ago there was a world where he was going to start and play every meaningful snap at left guard. That just was not something. Even if you'd told me Donovan Jackson is not going to play against Akron, I still would have been like, well, Austin Saraveld's not going to be the starter, and he's not going to play the entire game.
Yeah, no, he had I don't know, like rank the guys who had the best camp. And I guess we can't do that with a bunch of information because we only watched 5 practices, but based off what people have said and then what we saw on Saturday, he'd have to be pretty high up on the list, I'd imagine, with the push that he's made, right?
Without question.
Yeah.
So there's some stock available still, and I recommend getting it.
Yeah, I would get some as well. I would get some, and he's been around so long that maybe there's not much left for Jack Sawyer, but it felt like a carryover from the end of last year. And man, like stock up on Jack Sawyer and stock down on Ben Finley's ribcage. I felt bad for the guy. Like he just kept getting popped by Jack, like really hitting him hard. And it weren't sacks. They were like just plays where Ben Finley happened to get rid of the ball, and Jack was just sticking him like in a way that was totally clean. It's like, man, that guy just feels like he's on a bit of a mission this year to make sure teams kind of feel his presence out there. And I thought that we did. And I get that it's Akron, but as we talked about in the lead up to the Akron game, like think about the Youngstown State game last year when they were playing, I would assume, even worse offensive linemen and like could not get home. And I know that Jack I think was mad that he didn't have a sack, but I think he probably had the biggest impact on the game of any defensive lineman because he knocked the quarterback out of the game with how hard he was hitting the guy. So I think that is very much an upward trajectory still. I'm rethinking a little bit about like who might lead the team in sacks, and probably it was wise to just say it would be Jack to start because he has done it the last 2 years. But I think maybe there's more production there than perhaps even I was anticipating, just based off the consistency with which he was winning, even if he didn't get the sacks against Akron, and then obviously what he was doing when he got to the quarterback, which is finding a way to make an impact even if you're not checking off that box in the sack column.
When we talk about affecting the quarterback, it's almost always about like the 4 to 6 seconds, leading up and like getting pressure, getting the ball out, maybe getting sacks. But there's a part that we often don't discuss a lot, which is Ohio State having Jack Sawyer or JT Tuimoloau or like elite linebackers or Lathan Ransom accumulating hits on a quarterback throughout the game. If you're going to try to run your quarterback, and now I'm starting to think about Dylan Gabriel and Oregon and what's going to happen in that. Like Chip Kelly made a point as well on Tuesday. It's like, quarterbacks don't get hit in practice. Like it is a different thing. If you go from that to being hit by Ohio State's defensive athletes and the level of violence that they are talking about playing with within the rules, like that's a risky proposition. And that's going to get into your head. That's going to affect your play, even if like on a snap in, snap out basis, even if you're not getting home. The physical toll of playing against Ohio State is going to be difficult. And that's something to watch because we already saw this happen with Akron. Different level of competition, offensive line, certainly understand all that, but I don't think any person is built to withstand 60 minutes of being hit by Jack Sawyer.
No, I don't think so either. And I think generally making quarterbacks uncomfortable was something the defense did not do consistently enough last year. And this was just one game, but I think both those quarterbacks were feeling the presence of Ohio State's defensive line. Even I think what they finished with 5 sacks, I think, and 10 tackles for loss, which is pretty good. But it's not. I'm not even fixated on that. Like quarterback hits, put the guy on the ground when you have the opportunity to. Even if the ball's already out of his hand, you have that split second still where you're allowed to finish the play. Do it because he'll be thinking about it all game, and then all of a sudden in the third quarter, he's going to throw a ball to Jordan Hancock because he's worried about Jack Sawyer taking his head off. Like those things matter.
I bought some Arvell Reese a couple of weeks ago. If there's more out there, I'm going to pay whatever it costs.
Get it before it runs out. Yeah. I think a lot of people are in your shoes.
Yeah, he's just, and the truth of the matter is, I would also love to invest in CJ Hicks as a pass rushing threat. Like, I don't know that that's like a wise investment, but if it's loose, if it's cheap to get, like, there's got to be some world where it's going to happen at some point.
I think you would be buying the dip there.
Yeah,
that's not a bad idea.
You know,
especially if it carries over to the NFL, where he will play and be a good pass rusher.
He's going to be set up for success at that level. And I mentioned this on Tuesday, and I wasn't trying to give anybody like panic attacks, but like I'm more concerned about the Baron Browning of it all than I have ever been. Because it's also because I think like CJ Hicks might be a better pass rushing blitzing threat right now than Baron Browning was at any point at Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I don't want that to be a recency bias, but like it felt like they didn't have that idea. They couldn't quite execute it. They weren't fully embracing of it. Like if Ohio State threw its resources behind, hey, this is what CJ Hicks really does well, that would be wild to watch play out.
I think there was probably less talk about it with Baron Browning in the moment than there definitely has been with CJ Hicks. And maybe that's why you feel that way, because I feel the same way. I think there is more like 3-4 outside linebacker type of upside with CJ than Baron. Like Baron has tremendous upside. We've seen what he's been able to do in the NFL, but I do think CJ might have a little bit more of that. Will they tap into it? I don't know. I said on Tuesday that I'm hopeful that they will. I'm a little more hopeful they will, but it's probably foolish to think like, oh yeah, they'll figure it out, because we've seen that story play out before.
Yeah, it's the ultimate small sample size, but we've watched spring ball, student appreciation day, it always burned in my mind. Like when you just send Sonny Styles and CJ Hicks at the quarterback, it's going to be a scary time for that quarterback. Like that's a missile coming at you. But we hadn't seen it yet where CJ Hicks was deployed in that way to go do it until that blitz was called up. Like it was in the second quarter on Saturday against Akron. It was like, yep, see, he can do it out there too. And that's the part, like, I don't want to make too big a deal out of all the other linebacker reps and like what was going on there, how to explain all that stuff. But like, I've already seen CJ Hicks do that in practice, and then it translates directly to a game. It's like, once he goes, man, you're not going to block him, and he's going to get somebody on the ground, and it's going to hurt.
Yeah, and you're definitely not going to block him with a running back, which is what Akron tried to do on that play, which I think will probably have every team they play rethinking some of their blocking schemes when they think Ohio State's going to send pressure and CJ's on the field. So like that is a way that he can impact the game, but I don't know if it's going to be down to down doing linebacker stuff, right? I don't mean to write a player off so soon after just one game, but with how Arvell Reese looked, he looks like a guy who needs to play a lot. And Cody Simon's going to come back and he needs to play a lot, and Sonny Styles is going to play a lot. So like you can only play so many guys, and CJ Hicks seems to have a very specialized skill set that I think can help this team in a very tangible, impactful way. So we'll see. It'll be a question, I guess, maybe for Jim Knowles when we talk to him next week. And I don't know where they go from here. Yeah.
You got any Joe McGuire stock you're buying or what?
He had a nice game. Yeah. I would be lying if I said I wasn't a little bummed that Nick McClarty kind of let that job slip out of his hands in the week leading up to the Akron game. I guess all that matters is that Ohio State can flip the field the way it needs to when the opportunity arises. But I would like to see Nick McClarty get like a chance to really bomb one. And I guess Ryan Day said they thought about putting him out there and then they never did it. So maybe he'll get that chance this weekend.
Yeah, I think they may have jumped the gun just a little bit on the consistency thing. They hadn't seen it yet, so they want that opportunity. They're going to try and get that at some point. But that's
two-punter formation. You don't know what's
an option. 1-6-7, so he could lead block too if they want to run the fake that way.
Now you're getting into something.
Like I said, there's a lot of special teams investment going on at Ohio State now. So who knows? We'll see. It's something to keep an eye on for the Stockwatch, stock market. Ohio State. I don't know. Is there an exchange going for that yet? I hope there is, because
somewhere. Yeah,
that'd make it a lot easier for us to track.
It would be the track, yeah.
But as it is, don't have that yet. But we were just talking about Buckeyes impressing through week 1. Week 2, we're halfway there. Western Michigan Saturday night in the Horseshoe, a huge one. And then an off week, which just stinks. I don't even want to think about it.
It's weird.
Having that in week 3. Yeah. But it doesn't matter, because the podcast daily is going to roll along no matter what. Thanks for joining us for this Stockwatch. That's Bill Landis. I'm Austin Ward. We'll talk to you later.